My dad, bless his heart, was an engineer and my mom was an accountant. They were both firmly entrenched in their careers. They were very analytical, and I never once saw that particular career path. I was like, I'm going to do something creative if it's the last thing I do. And when I was in high school, I just fell into things that really tickled me. Like I was the yearbook editor and I worked in the newspaper and I wanted to be in the theater, and pretty much anything creative sort of piqued my interest. I always enjoyed English, anything that had to do with wordsmithing. I found quickly was my calling as a burgeoning teenager.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Michael Mackie. Michael is well known in the Kansas City area for his appearances on local Kansas City television, as well as his frequent contributions to the culture section of The Pitch. Michael has interviewed a litany of Emmy, Academy, and Grammy Award winners. He claims that if you name a celebrity, I've probably interviewed them twice. Michael has been a member of the prestigious Society of American Travel Writers and has even hosted a Midwest-based travel show called Get Lost. And he's won 8 Emmy Awards. You can learn more about Michael at michaelmackie.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Michael.
Michael, welcome to the Corporate Couch this afternoon.
You are awesome for having me. I appreciate you having me on your show, Jeff.
No, I'm honored. You've named a celebrity and you've probably interviewed them twice. So there you go.
That is true. I don't want to drop names, Jeff, but it's true.
But you will throughout the episode, I'm sure. So let's just get that straight. Yeah. When I started out in podcasting, I said I want to be the corporate version of Michael Mackie. That was kind of my goal, you know. So
if I had a nickel, Jeff, I'd have 75 cents.
Well, let's start with a fun question, even though I'm not sure how you're going to answer it, because you're so transparent on every social media platform, on your blog, and in every production that you're a part of. But even the people that know you fairly well, Michael, what one thing would surprise them about you?
This is a weird one. Not very many people know this. Close friends know that I have a freakish, irrational fear of horses. True story. I have full-blown equinophobia, and no, I've never had a rogue interaction with a horse. I've never been kicked or trampled, but it's completely irrational. But horses scare the living bejesus out of me. And if I am on the plaza and I hear the clip clop of that Cinderella carriage, Jeff, I am running for my life. So not very many people know that I have a genuine disdain, a fear, if you will, of horses.
So equine therapy is not part of your therapy sessions?
It is not. In fact, there was a Chiefs player, and I cannot remember who it was. Barry. No, was it Barry?
Eric Berry.
Yeah, he has equinophobia as well.
Wow.
And so when what was the horse that would run in, up and down the field? There was a horse.
War Paint.
When War Paint would run up and down, Eric Berry would like freak out and run off the field.
Yeah.
Eric Berry and I are kindred spirits in that regard.
Yeah, you remind me of like a
Of Eric
Caucasian
Berry, I
red
get that a
hair
lot. I get,
Eric Berry.
I get that a lot. So you're not the first person to have said that. It's like one and the same.
Well, we're going to get into your career and your Emmy and Grammy winning awards and things like that, but let's start with your origins.
Just the Emmys, not the. I haven't got the EGOT yet, but it's great to have goals.
There you go. So you grew up in Des Moines. What was fun for you growing up? What did you love doing?
My entire family, almost exclusively, were in farming, and it was weird because my parents were not. So while I was very farm adjacent, I did not necessarily grow up in I grew up in Des Moines proper. So it was a lot of times it was where city mouse meets country mouse type thing. I am still incredibly tight with all my aunts and uncles up there. In fact, I'm headed up there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the fabulous holidays. And it's always, there's no place like home. And believe me when I tell you, Des Moines is like the mothership calling me home.
And since you quoted The Wizard of Oz, I did notice that you've never have watched The Wizard of Oz original version. Is that correct?
Try and wrap your brain around that. In fact, this week I went to go see the green carpet premiere of Wicked. Like, I saw Wicked before it came out in theaters, and I'd seen the musical, but yeah, I have never seen The Wizard of Oz. Do I know all the pop culture references? Like, I'll get you my pretty and your little dog too. Yes, I know all the pop culture references, but I seen it in its entirety? No, I have not.
Well, I'm going to go on record. I've never seen any version of the Star Wars movies. So,
Jeff, I don't even know who you are anymore. That is insane. Okay, I'll trump your ace. You haven't seen Star Wars. I've never seen one episode of Seinfeld. Ha-ha!
Oh, wow. That hurts, actually. That hurts.
There you go. Trumped your ace.
Not even the shrinkage episode, huh? Okay.
Nope. Not even Master of Your Domain. Again, I know all the pop culture references. Do you have a square to spare? I know all the references, but
Mulva. Yeah, sure.
Gipple. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So you love watching TV, I saw. What were some of your favorite TV shows growing up?
I think the one that I was most obsessed with was The Bionic Woman. And I don't know why I fell so hard for Lindsay Wagner, but I was always obsessed with her. And to a lesser degree, Wonder Woman. So maybe I always had this affinity for strong female archetypical characters. And but yeah, Lindsay Wagner was always at the zenith on the list of people that I wanted to interview. And when I finally did interview her, it was magical and mystical. And we can talk about that later. But
really nice.
Lindsay Wagner was pretty much the pinnacle of my entertainment reporting career.
I had a TV crush on Lindsay also, so we share that.
And what about Linda Carter? I think
I did like Linda Carter for sure, but I had more of a crush on Lindsay, I think.
All right, I'm turning the tables on you for a minute, my friend. Who was your first television crush?
My first one? Oh man, I'm gonna have to go with Lori Day's character on The Partridge Family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What was her? What? Yeah.
God, I can't remember her name. She went on to star in L.A. Law, and I still had a crush on her, even
Susan Day.
Susan Day.
Yes. Lori on The Partridge Family.
There you go. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, and then continued that crush when she was on L.A. Law. My wife didn't like that, but I mean, it was just a TV crush. I mean,
it was the '80s. It was a different time, Jeff. So.
It's all good. All good. So do you have aspirations to be in broadcast when you were growing up? Or was kind of what I'm going to be this when I grow up?
I always joked growing up that somehow I would be in TV, on TV, or watching TV. And to this day, I'm still obsessed with that particular medium. In fact, when I went to the University of Iowa, all I wanted to do was I got my degree in broadcasting. And I joke that I got my degree in broadcasting with a minor in French and a minor in theater. So I'm destined to someday work on a television sitcom in Quebec because of those three outlets. And I've always been fascinated with TV. And I started at a TV station in my hometown of Des Moines, Iowa. It was the TV station that I grew up watching, KCCI, Iowa's news leader, and was there for about 8 years and really cut my teeth and found out, because it's a smaller market, it's a medium-sized market, not nearly as big as Kansas City. And that's where I really sort of learned what goes on behind the scenes and how to present myself and how to come across on TV. And sort of, they were the journalistic gold standard, if you will, because they were the highest, for a long time, they were the highest rated CBS affiliate in the country. And so
Oh, wow.
we were for Des Moines, go figure.
Yeah.
We were the gold standard. So I learned a lot there. And
So
really,
did you get help in terms of picking a career? I mean, I think it's so hard for a 17, 18-year-old to say, hey, this is what I want to do. For me, once I knew I was not going to be an NFL quarterback, I had played around with sports broadcasting, but I never did anything. And I just knew I could get a job if I had a business degree and information systems and did that. But so, do you remember your process and what went into saying, okay, I'm going to be a broadcaster? University of Iowa has a great program. Tell us about that piece for you.
my dad, bless his heart, was an engineer and my mom was an accountant. And they were both firmly entrenched in their careers before I came along. And I watched them, and they were very analytical and very right brain. And I never once saw that particular career path. I was like, I'm going to do something creative if it's the last thing I do. And when I was in high school, I just fell into things that really tickled me. Like, I was the yearbook editor and I worked in the newspaper and I wanted to be in the theater, and pretty much anything creative sort of piqued my interest. And I always enjoyed English. Anything that had to do with wordsmithing I found quickly was my calling even as a burgeoning teenager.
So how did I mean, obviously you worked at the Iowa Des Moines affiliate for 8 years, then you transition out. Just kind of, I know you had a long, iconic career, but it looked like I'll say a pretty typical career progression in the kind of the TV news producer, writer, reporter, host type of thing. Talk about that.
I was always kind of a Renaissance man when it came to the television news industry. Like, there wasn't any particular aspect of it that I did not care for, save for the videography part. Like, I've never, in my entire 40 years on this earth, I've never once picked up a camera. And I don't even know how cameras function. So I would always leave it up to the videographers and the photojournalists to make everything pretty. And then I would write the words that would, the storytelling was always sort of my strong suit. But I went from a TV station in Des Moines, and I worked for a hot minute in Orlando. And then I sort of got a semi-promotion to our sister station here in Kansas City, which is KMBC, which, oddly enough, back in the 90s and 2000s, KMBC was the #1 ABC affiliate in the country. So again, blessed and highly favored to be working for a powerhouse station that could basically do no wrong. And so Kansas City is a much, much bigger market than Des Moines ever was. And so I got a lot more experience, and I got a lot more opportunities to try things and fail miserably sometimes. But eventually that's where I sort of fell into interviewing celebrities. And I became an ipso facto entertainment reporter accidentally, which I had started kind of in Des Moines. And that has carried me for the last, 25, 30 years of interviewing celebs. And that was never on my radar. And I don't know, probably 10 years into it, I was like, oh, you know what? I kind of have a knack for this.
Yeah, I've interviewed a mutual friend now of ours, Heidi Lehman, and she said you were like one of the biggest influencers and celebrity interviewers in the country at the time when she was doing her media business. So that's a high praise.
I think moving forward, we should probably refer to her as the Heidi Lehman, because I feel like she would have preferred that as opposed to just Heidi Lehman. So yes, the Heidi Lehman, she ran a entertainment division called Moxie Q, and man, did she give me, I was on so many red carpets thanks to Moxie Q, and that's where I really sort of honed my craft and realized, okay, this could pay the bills. This could propel me into the stratosphere. And so I really owe a lot of my entertainment reporting knowledge and know-how to just the opportunities that she gave me at Moxie Q. So it was a good learning curve, and it was way, way, way outside my comfort zone, because on the red carpet, it was like star after star after star, and they're standing in front of you, and you don't have time to panic or freak out. You have approximately 2 to 4 minutes to dazzle them and get a soundbite, and then next it was like this weird conveyor belt,
right?
Of celebrities, and next, and then somebody else famous would be standing in front of you, so there wasn't really time to ever freak out.
Yeah. Were there any moments of where you had oh shit, like you called Madonna Lady Gaga, or somebody came after you with the mic, or somebody was really drunk?
There are 2 stories that come to mind. One, back in 1997, I interviewed, it was sort of in the infancy of my career. Like, I'd been doing it like 3 or 4 years. And I interviewed a lot of B-list and C-list celebrities, none of whom ever really piqued my interest. Like, it was like Joanne Worley and Dennis Weaver and Sherman Hemsley, a lot of stars from the 70s and 80s. But in 1997, I got the chance to interview Sarah McLachlan, who at the time was all over the charts. Like, she could do no wrong. She had just released an album and she was on tour, and I got the chance to go backstage and interview her. And that remains my worst interview, because I don't know what happened, Jeff, but I think, if I were a betting man, I would say that my tongue swelled to like 50 times its normal size, because when Sarah walked out, I could not speak. And she was like, "Hello, I'm Sarah McLachlan." And I was like, and it went downhill from there. And if you've ever seen the skit, the Saturday Night Live skit, the Chris Farley Show, where he was like to Paul McCartney, and he'd be like, do you remember that one time that you were in the Beatles? Like that is how basic and rudimentary I was, to the point where I think Sarah thought I was having a stroke, and no part of that interview was usable, because I was so flummoxed and starstruck to be standing in front of Sarah McLachlan that I just butchered the interview. And I vowed then and there that no matter how amazing the person is that is in front of me, I will always be professional, and I'll always be prepared moving forward. Full stop.
Funny. Besides Lindsay Wagner, what was your most fun interview? And I know you can't have a favorite person, but like what one that resonated with you? And
I've had a few. Unfortunately, sometimes I would go into interviews with preconceived notions about the celebrity themselves. And that is not the thing to do. So I always pictured Jennifer Lopez as a diva, and I had this mental image of what she was going to be like, and she was going to be a diva. And that turned out to be one of the best interviews I've ever done, because out of the gate, she was completely disarming, congenial, giggly, laughy. And I was like, okay, I'm not interviewing Jennifer Lopez. I am indeed interviewing Jenny from the block. And so I turned on the razzle dazzle, Jeff, and it was one of, if not the best interview I've ever done. And she had just opened up a new restaurant in Pasadena, and I think it was called Madres. And it was, based on her, her being Puerto Rican and Puerto Rican cooking. And it was back in this was like 2000 probably. It was the hot ticket. To get a good table at Madres took like 6 months. And I jokingly said at the end of the interview, I said, "Hey, J-Lo, I go, haha, who does a boy have to know around here to get a good table at Madre's? And she goes, well, that would be me. And I said, well, sister friend, I'm going out there in 6 weeks. I'm going to go to Pasadena and I'm going to need a table. And she goes, how many and when? And I literally was like, Saturday the 6th at 6 p.m. And she was like, done, Jeff.
Wow.
I went to Madre's. I took 5 of my closest friends and they were like, there's no way we're getting in. And sure enough, they had a table for 6 ready for me. And
Wow.
I was the man of the hour. So
Wow.
thank you, J-Lo. Oh, and here's another weird story, just complete sidebar. And it's weird that we're doing this interview today. I just found a very, very dusty box of very old school beta tapes with all the raw interviews that I did from 2000, 2001, 2002. And I just had them digitized. And I'm going to unleash my full interview with Jennifer Lopez that has not been seen since I interviewed her in 2000.
Wow. Incredible.
So when this podcast comes out, that should be up and ready for viewing.
Love it. Love it. Who was J-Lo dating or married to during that time? You remember?
One of her dancers who ended up being the manager at the restaurant, who is the one I had to suck up to get the table.
There you go. Love it. So to go back to your career, your news career and that, so you leave KMBZ to go to another, the CBS affiliate in Kansas City, KCTV5. Was that to kind of take that hosting gig, where you were the pop culture guru?
There was between those two, I went into agency land. I got out of TV and I went into the world of television advertising, and I worked at an agency. At the time, it was called Platform Advertising, and all we did was represent schools, colleges, and universities. So it was more, everything we did was in the education sector, and it was a great gig because I saw probably 2/3 of the country on somebody else's dime, because I would always be traveling to do shoots at these college campuses, which there are bazillion college campuses, and many of them were our clients. And when I got out of that, I fell into KCTV5, so back on the air. And then right out of that, I went right from the KCTV5 gig. I owe basically my career to Carolyn Long, because she allowed me to be a feature reporter and do the goofiest reports on whatever I wanted to do when I was at the CBS affiliate. And that's when the NBC affiliate took notice and gave me the gig to host Kansas City Live for a couple of years.
Oh yeah. That was a great show. I remember you as a host there. I want to go back to platform advertising, because platform, I would, it's one thing being, in news stations and those type of affiliates, but to me, that's kind of more of a corporate job. So how did you navigate? I mean, obviously you have the talent, but it's kind of, okay, now I'm going to work for basically an advertising, agency in the education space. How did you kind of navigate there?
Bless their hearts, Platform and the owners, Michael and Tammy Platt, the Platts of Platform, really gave me carte blanche while I was there. They knew that my strengths were in storytelling. And so they also knew that I could make anyone feel comfortable in front of a camera. And so they would send me with a television crew out to all these campuses to get testimonials and to talk to students about how going back to school changed their lives. And it took me a good 6 months to get out of, television news mode and really start a secondary career in long-term storytelling. And because some of these kids, I mean, come on, if they hadn't gone back to school, they wouldn't have done much with their lives. And so these career colleges and these higher ed institutions would really help nurture these kids along so that they would have career skills, whether it's in the medical field or I interviewed kids who wanted to be motorcycle repairmen, or they wanted to be HVAC techs, or medical assistants. So whatever their I'll guarantee you, whatever career field they wanted to go into, there was a school that would help them aspire to that dream.
Yeah, interesting. And I remember Platform was like kind of one of the best places in Kansas City to work for. You know, the Platts created this company that was very successful. So, what was kind of the difference culture wise? And maybe there wasn't any because you got carte blanche. But what was the difference between like Platform and any of the news stations you worked for?
News stations were all corporate owned, and I was always, no matter what, the news always went on at 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. And so no matter what, I would always be on deadline. I was, you couldn't miss deadline. And the show goes on and you are ready. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When I got to Platform, I realized I had a lot more leeway and a lot more time to really make these stories about these kids the absolute best that they could be. Stories that would resonate not just with their peers, but stories that would resonate with, parents who perhaps saw their kids struggling or didn't know what next steps were going to be, and, always thought their kid would, work in a menial job for the rest of their life at minimum wage. So I really, again, I credit the Platts with having an open mind, and no matter what I threw against the wall, they would let me see if it stuck, because I went in with zero knowledge of the education sector, of the education industry. And so for the first 6 months, I was just kind of flailing about trying to find my groove. And once I did, it was just go time. And that's really been the story of my life ever since then, is just finding the best ways to tell the best stories about people, because everybody got a story. It's just in how you present it.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. If you're having challenges taking your business to the next level, if you want to augment your leadership team, or prepare your company for increased growth, profitability, and an eventual successful exit, we have seasoned executives from every C-suite position ensuring a perfect fit for your needs and the dynamics of your industry. You will work with senior leaders who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. They can help your business in specific services such as strategic planning, executive leadership coaching, financial management, corporate governance, marketing, sales management, and many other advisory solutions vital to your business success. That's exechq.com. To learn more, go to exechq.com or email Jeff Palacio at jeff.palacio@exechq.com.
Obviously, storytelling is a theme of your career. So did you have were you a reader? Did you have certain favorite authors or books? Like where did that storytelling gene come from for you, Michael?
That is a good question. I've never been asked that. Good job, Jeff. I don't know. I always knew how to get people to be their best, genuine, authentic self in front of the camera. And I think that's because I would never talk to them like they were on camera. I would always just start yammering away with them. And then I gently nudge the cameraman behind me, who knew that nudge meant to start the camera. So these kids and I are just having a conversation, and they're all panicky because they're like, well, will you let me know when the interview gets going? And I'm like, absolutely. Well, 9 out of 10 times I would never tell them that the camera was rolling. Right. So they just thought we were having a conversation. And I tell you what, all the producers and directors sort of stole my thunder, because they realized that's the best way to get candid, real responses, was just to be a chatty Cathy, which I don't know if you've noticed, Jeff, but I have that skill in spades, being a chatty Cathy.
Well, talking about the Heidi Lehman, we actually talked about her podcast episode with me, and I said, you did a phenomenal job. And she said, it's like that Brady Bunch episode where the red light goes on and, they kind of, they don't know what to do because the recording started.
Right. They freeze. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I've been putting the recording on from the beginning, kind of when we warm up, so people don't get, oh God, we're recording. So,
well, we're half an hour in and I haven't sworn yet. So I feel like I'm doing pretty good. I
yeah,
feel
that's good. And you're totally allowed. It's okay. We don't, it's not recorded live on LinkedIn where there's no swearing. I know you fill in sometimes for the podcast Drinks with Leaders.
Yeah, there's no swearing on LinkedIn. Okay,
right.
well, that's good to know. Maybe I'll just drop a couple of F-bombs gratuitously.
Just see what happens. I would like
just see what, let's just do it. Let's do it.
Oh God. So what led you back into the TV world from platform?
Well, there were a couple opportunities. Like basically, KCTV5 reached out and just offered me a once a week feature gig. And again, it was whatever I wanted to do. And right around that time, because my life works in mysterious ways, Halls, the department store, the beloved, iconic department store here in Kansas City, asked me if I had any interest in being their spokesperson for a couple of years. And that got me an immense amount of accolades and pats on the back. And so again, everything in my career has sort of, I don't want to say it's been handed to me on a silver platter, but I've always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And I'm a firm believer that if you make space for things, everything always works out exactly as it's supposed to, when it's supposed to.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing, that as we've gotten to know each other, and I started following you on LinkedIn, and I believe it was Scott Havens introduced us at the Speakeasy. I think that's maybe the first time we met. But I love this things you're doing on personal branding and helping people on that path. So talk about, obviously you have a personal brand, but, teaching others to kind of, show what they stand for as a person is important. So talk about that journey for you.
I really did not realize the power of a personal brand. To be perfectly honest, I didn't even know that term, but it's funny. Everyone was like, oh yeah, your brand is really strong. It's very you. And I'd be like, I just post literally whatever pops into my head and I don't think twice about it. And so for a couple of years, most recently, I worked at an agency that specialized in personal branding, where I learned sort of the who, what, when, where of how to do it. And it's funny because there is most definitely a fine art to personal branding, but it starts with finding really mindful, strategic ways to shamelessly, blatantly promote someone without anyone knowing they're being shamelessly, blatantly promoted. At the end of the day, you can't put out an ad for someone because people see right through that. It looks disingenuous. It looks like basically trickery. And after a while, people will just start scrolling right past all that nonsense. So the goal was to find ways to, it's like, I joke, it's like if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, does it make a sound? That old philosophical adage. Well, personal branding is, if you do all these really great, amazing, phenomenal, terrific things and no one knows about them, does anyone care? Did you actually do them? So in essence, what I learned is what you put out needs to be, at the end of the day, real, authentic, genuine, heartfelt, sincere content that resonates with whoever your audience is. And that has been sort of what I've been doing for the last couple of years. And I never thought I would be even remotely good at it. And then a funny thing happened. My storytelling abilities kicked in. And it was, that is always my default button. And so I was always able to tell people stories. Once I learned what the client was all about and what they brought to the table and all the exciting things, that's when I got to be pretty good helping people build their personal brands in a way that best represented who they were and all the things they had to offer the world.
Yeah, I'm so curious because, I think, I don't know exactly when we got connected, but I'll say it has to be in the last 3 years, give or take. But so you were obviously an Instagram influencer, I'm going to say, or,
Facebook was my jam.
Facebook. Okay, so Facebook. So, but talk about how you embrace LinkedIn and how you would, what advice you have for people that are coming on the platform. Because I think LinkedIn, from, having been on it since in the very early days, I don't know why I did, but I did. And I see LinkedIn as, your job is to promote your company via LinkedIn. So those people are on it. Business development people are on it. People that want to, get a platform for their content are on it. But, the average person that has a job that has nothing to do with LinkedIn is not on LinkedIn a lot. So I just talk about, you're this high-powered influencer using Facebook and Instagram possibly, and then you migrate over, and start learning kind of the LinkedIn. What were your findings there?
I always thought LinkedIn was a just snooze factor of a social media outlet. Like I never really realized the power that LinkedIn held until I fully and completely immersed myself in it for the last 2 years and change. And to be honest, I never knew that it could, the breadth of what it had to offer, because I was never on that particular site. I mean, I am right there with you. I thought it was a place for people to find jobs, or, I never knew that it could be used to network. I never knew that it was that I could somehow mix in a little bit of Michael Mackie with a little bit of what I was doing, with a little bit of, I call it, and this is not a new term, but it's a term that I like to pepper in. LinkedIn for me is a perfect blend of infotainment. It is usually something about me and something about the company I work for and something about a fun fact or maybe a statistic that would resonate with people who are scrolling by. And then finally, a completely gratuitous picture of my dog dressed up in a Halloween outfit. It's absolutely the most, like, I see people who just post the same content over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it is so boring and dull, and you're never going to get any traction. So I just decided to sort of figure out a way to, again, like I said, put my best face forward, figuratively and literally, and started storytelling. And then I started telling other people's stories, the clients that I worked with. And it was a definite mixed bag. It was everybody from C-suite executives to people who were in the philanthropic realm to solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. It was a very varied mixed bag, and everybody had a different voice. And so for a while, it was fun I felt like every day I was kind of like writing in multiple people's voices, and that sort of sounds a little schizophrenic, but then once you have mastered the fine art of telling people, like I had, of what people wanted to put out into the world, it became sort of like second nature. I really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. I still enjoy all the things I post on LinkedIn. Hint, hint to your listeners right now. If you're not following me and Jeff on LinkedIn, you better follow us right now, immediately. Stop the podcast and go connect with us.
Absolutely.
Please.
Absolutely. So if you could give somebody one piece of advice in terms of if they wanted to use LinkedIn more to show what they stand for as a person, whether it helps them personally or their company, what advice would you give them?
I would say what you put out there, like with anything, better be authentic and genuine. And I know I've said those two words like about 100 times in this podcast, but I cannot implore people enough that if they're just reposting, or if they're just sharing articles, that isn't doing you a bit of good. You need to find your voice and start telling people what you're about, what you bring to the table, some of the great things that people need to know about you. And you need to do it authentically and genuinely, because otherwise it just comes across as ad-like. It comes across as basically a commercial, and it seems really gratuitous and it seems super disingenuous. And that is the biggest turnoff. And people wonder why they can't grow their brands. It's because they just are putting out the exact same content, lather, rinse, repeat. And that's not the way to do it. So that would be my piece of advice. And mix it up. You can throw in pictures, you can throw in videos, you can throw in stats. There's a million different ways to do it. So
It looked like you did some travel writing for a period of time. Tell us about that.
that was kind of talk about a pivot. That was a weird foray for me. I'd always been, at the end of the day, I call myself a writer, and that's always been how I make my bread and butter. But I had always had an inkling to do travel writing. And then the pandemic happened. And then in 2021, I had the opportunity to start doing travel writing, except the only problem was I had zero gravitas. I had zero pull. I was basically just fumbling along trying to find my way. The thing with travel writing is you really have to know somebody, or you have to be firmly entrenched in that particular industry to get any sort of groundswell for anybody to read your stuff. Well, because I knew what I wanted, I started, Jeff, I started branding myself as a travel writer, even though I was not. I started, every time I went somewhere, I would write a blog about it, or I would post about it, and I would, toot my own horn. And little by little by little, I would start getting the weirdest assignments, like the Poughkeepsie Convention and Visitors Bureau, or Shreveport. Just weird cities would invite me to come and write about them. And I was all for it because it was on somebody else's dime. I didn't have to pay for it. I, to this day, would be a full-time travel writer, except for the fact that I've never been as poor in my entire life. I made zero money being a travel writer, but it was one of the best things I ever did because it was a different outlet. I was always an entertainment reporter or a feature reporter. Well, travel writing is its own little beast. And after, I think I probably tried 3 or 4 times to get on with the Society of American Travel Writers, and I just kept getting turned down. And so, because I didn't have any library, or I didn't have basically any claim to fame. And on my 3rd and final attempt to get on with the Society of American Travel Writers, it was a Hail Mary. And somehow, I don't know if they took pity on me, but I got in. And once you're in that inner circle, that inner sanctum, I got a lot more opportunities, and I really started to shine in that regard. And at the same time, I heard through the grapevine that the PBS affiliate here in Kansas City was looking for new content. And so I went in guns a-blazing, and I was like, I'm a travel writer, and I'm going to pitch these 3 travel shows because I'm awesome. And I'll be damned if KC PBS didn't nibble at one of those pitches that I did. And bless their hearts, they have an amazing green light process where anybody just can walk in off the street and try to attempt to pitch a show. And it mercifully made it through the first cut, the second cut, it made it all the way to production. It was a 2-year process, and I learned a lot about how TV shows get made. And we came out with a pilot episode, and that was last March. It was called Get Lost with an exclamation point. And it was, out of everything I've ever done in my entire life, that pilot episode is and probably will be my most favorite thing I've ever worked on, because that was something that I created basically from scratch with the help of many players, cast, and crew who put their knowledge and know-how into this travel show. And I even scored, and this is neither here nor there, but I even scored a Emmy nomination for Best Host, which out of the gate for a pilot episode, not too shabby.
Yeah, very nice.
I will say that KCPBS gave it everything they had, but it just didn't. I think it came down to, I'm guessing it came down to money because we did not get picked up for a second season. But I will always have that as sort of my, I got a show off the ground. Like I literally went in, pitched a show, made it happen, and got it all the way to air and beyond. So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And so again, right place, right time. And I don't have enough good things to say about the crew that I worked with. It was just the people who work at Kansas City PBS are single-handedly some of the most talented people I've ever worked with in any station, in any place, in any part of the country. And that is just facts are facts. So nothing but good things to say about them. And again, that propelled me back into the spotlight. And I did not see that coming. Like there were billboards, Jeff. There were billboards with my face on it and my co-host, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was a really good learning opportunity. So who knows? Maybe I'll be able to pitch another show. Maybe I'll go in a different direction. But travel writing is never going to leave my orbit. It's always going to be part of my essence because I really enjoy it.
It's such a fascinating career you had, Michael, in terms of, a lot of, TV shows and TV news and reporting and, the whole journey you shared with the travel show on PBS. What's kind of the average viewer? What's the one thing that they would be surprised about in kind of the TV world that they would have no idea even happens?
The amount of cooks in the kitchen. The only time that I ever was able to be left up to my own devices was when I was at Platform, because I had sort of control over the stories that I would tell about these kids. But otherwise, there are a lot of creative people with a lot of creative input, and like 9 out of 10 times I always valued everything that anyone ever brought to the table, because sometimes my vision wasn't always the best, clearest, most decisive vision, and I needed some input. And so I've learned everybody needs to be involved, and I am all about collaboration, and I'm all about listening to how to make a show just that much better. So I don't think people really realize all the people behind the scenes that really make a show shine and help it come together, sometimes at the absolute 12th hour.
So the show didn't get picked up for another season. What's next for Michael Mackie?
I don't know. I'm really excited to see sort of what the future holds. I love all my freelance gigs. I've been writing. I'm the senior entertainment reporter at The Pitch. I've been writing for them for 3 years. And a lot of times when famous people come to town, I will immediately throw my hat into the ring for an interview. And it used to be that I would get like maybe 1 out of 10 interviews because the Kansas City Star would always sort of steal my thunder. Well, now I've been doing it for so long, and I have enough, like I said, gravitas that, you know what, I'm starting to get some big name interviews. Like I just interviewed the entire cast of HBO's, the HBO show Somebody Somewhere, which oddly enough is set in Manhattan, Kansas. And this is the 3rd and final season for the show, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't have enough. If it is a run, do not walk, Jeff. You need to go watch Somebody Somewhere. I love it with every fiber of my being.
All right,
it's really set in our backyard.
Any other hosting opportunities coming your way?
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I'm always up for a good MC gig, but most recently, because again, my life works in mysterious ways, out of the ether, the fine folks at Norwegian Cruise Lines asked me, along with the team here locally at Ascendus Travel, if I would be interested in hosting a cruise next year. And that, to me, is sort of the culmination of being a travel writer and being a micro influencer and having a travel show, because they asked if I would like to host an excursion in Sevilla, Spain, which, I don't know if your listeners know, but it's Kansas City's sister city. And it's also the city that gave birth to all of the architecture that people find on the Country Club Plaza. And so there's a big tie-in between Sevilla and Kansas City. And when Ascendus asked me, I was like, well, I don't know what that entails. What does it mean to be a host on a cruise? They basically said, well, guess what? You're going to host that particular excursion and take people around and show them the tie-ins between Sevilla and Kansas City. And that just sounded like an amazing opportunity. So that will be happening next November. Thank you very much. Thank you, Norwegian Cruise Lines. Thank you, Ascendus Travel, for the opportunity. And I can't wait to see, maybe that will parlay into something like every year. Maybe that's my new calling, my new claim to fame.
Yeah, I love it. That's so cool. And you're right. I mean, I've interviewed, over 110 guests at this point in the Corporate Couch, and people's careers just evolve. And, if you're open to opportunities and, God, the universe puts you in the next place you need to be. So you're definitely an example of that too, like many of the others I've interviewed. Michael, I'd love you to give your advice to some of the younger generation out there in terms of those coming out of college, whether it's this past May or this upcoming December of 2024. What advice would you give them as they start their corporate career and obtain that first job?
3 words. Just say yes. I'll tell you this much. I did not get as far in my career as I have. I have literally said yes to everything. Every single person that invites me to something, it's an automatic yes. Because saying no gets you nowhere. No stops the conversation cold. Yes opens up a dialogue. It opens up doors. It just to all the kids out there listening, just say yes. Because if somebody goes out of their way to invite you to something, the least you can do is, even if you just show up for 15 minutes, make an appearance. I joke, and this has become a running gag, I would go to the opening of an envelope, Jeff, but all you got to do is invite me. So anytime anybody asks anything of me, it's a almost instantaneous yes, unless it's illegal, and then it's still probably a yes.
That's good in so many ways, but I will say the 3-word answer has been the shortest one and one of the best advice you can give people. And I love that. And, we can leave out the illegal part, but it will still be in the podcast. Michael, you're a gift to Kansas City and beyond. I'm glad we've become friends this last several years. And thank you for coming on the Corporate Couch today.
It has been my pleasure, and I'm so tickled. It's so great to see all the successes that you've had with this show, and here's to many more fabulous interviews.
Yeah, thank you. How funny is Michael Mackie? That's all.
Oh my God, that guy! I could listen to that interview. Could have been 3 times longer, easy. Right? Just
I don't know. Did I even talk in that interview?
Not very much. You just kind of gave him the microphone, and he ran.
Oh, he's so good.
He is amazing.
He's so good. And oh God, I don't think I've ever talked about this of any of our 115 plus guests. But he had the shortest answer to what advice would you give a recent college graduate to navigate their first career, job search, or first job at post college and the beginning of their career. And I loved it. It's 3 words. Just say yes.
Say yes to everything.
Say yes to everything. And he talked about, when he got into TV news, he basically did everything. He was a Renaissance person, but he never picked up a camera. I guess he drew the line. But I loved it. And he goes, oh yeah, people ask me today, do I want to go to this opening, this show, the opening or this play? He goes, I would go to the opening of an envelope. Just say yes.
That's a great line. I loved it.
And and he was, big on non-professional social media, mainly Facebook, a little bit of Instagram. So I asked him about his LinkedIn but he's so transparent. I mean, we could have talk for hours. Like we didn't even talk about his his sobriety, because he's very transparent, talking about his, how he, has not drank in so long. But yeah, he's just a master storyteller. I love his branding in terms of teaching others their personal brand, which is phenomenal, and how he embraced LinkedIn. And, I think he eventually called it like an infotainment. He goes, not many people would describe it, but he goes, I put a picture of my dog up there for Halloween. And, it's you don't want to put boring stuff that's the same thing all the time. But he's just so good, and it's going to be fun to see what he does next. Besides, he's on this cruise to Seville, Spain, so he's drumming up business for that, I believe, as we speak, because I think it's November of 2025. So, but yeah, Michael's just so good. Joe, what did you take out of the episode?
It was amazing, and I tell you a little inside baseball to tell people, our listeners on the Corporate Couch, but inside baseball about Corporate Couch. One of my jobs at the Corporate Couch is that I get to pick what becomes ultimately what we call the cold open. That's that little minute snippet that's at the very beginning of the episode. That's kind of like the hook that says, here's what we're going to talk about. When you like to hear more from this person, and I pick those. And so usually when I'm listening to a interview for the first time, I am listening to something and making little notes about, well, that would be a good spot for the cold open. And so just, 2 or 3 minutes into his interview, I said, oh, that little story right there, that minute, that would be a good spot for the cold open. And I marked that down. And then about 2 minutes later, I found another, oh, gosh, that would be a good one for the cold. Oh, well, we already had a cold open. And that went over and over and over again. I could have literally dropped the needle on any part of that episode, let it run for about 45, 50 seconds, and said, well, there's the best cold open I could find in that whole thing. It was an incredibly entertaining interview. He's an incredibly interesting person, and I'm tickled to death to see what he's going to come up with next. He's got a lot of living to do ahead of him.
Yeah, and all the interviews he's done, J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez,
everybody.
The Sarah McLachlan story where he got tongue-tied. He said it was the same as the Chris Farley, Paul McCartney skit.
Yeah.
On Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. You remember when you were with the Beatles and you got arrested in Japan? That was awesome. Yeah. He is just so funny.
What leadership wisdom would you like to give our listeners today, Joe?
We're going back to that great philosopher Stephen Wright, who one time said this. He said, if at first you don't succeed, destroy all the evidence that you tried.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.